All right.
All right, good morning, everyone. So if we could, Mr. Vogel, start with a formal roll call.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Ms. Dawson.
Present.
All right. Mr. Esme.
Present.
Ms. Evans.
Present.
Mr. Tatum.
Present.
And Ms. Williamson. Ms. Williamson. All right, Madam Chair, for the 5 members are present, a quorum is present.
Perfect. So the next topic is, I think, kind of pretty standard at this point, but the meeting minutes from the February 22nd meeting have been posted. If anybody's had a chance to look at them, if there are any corrections, anything that needs to be changed, please just let me know. All right, hearing no objections, then the meeting minutes are approved. So we don't have, kind of just as I've been thinking about this task force, I think we all worked super, super hard to get our report, that preliminary report in. And then I don't know about all of you, but I kind of took a couple weeks to sort of focus on some other work and some other things. So I think just kind of good to sort of circle back a few things. I kind of just want to sort of start kind of like we did last time, where I feel like our group did a really good job of sort of establishing a plan so that we had kind of an idea of meeting topics we wanted to talk about and things to sort of get it scheduled so that we're all being very productive with our time. So I thought it might be good to sort of as a group start thinking about that. Another thing is I do want to talk about scheduling our meetings and how often we want to meet and when and what makes sense and what works for everybody. And then just sort of the last thing, and while I'm really thinking about it, is, and this maybe kind of goes back to that first piece I just said, is we did get that new data set from the Department of Human Services, the 2018 to 2019 overview part 3. And I didn't ask anybody to be prepared with it today, but I do think there's a lot of very valuable information in there that I think really pertains to our group. And so I think this probably goes back to the first topic of scheduling and coming up with future topic ideas, but I definitely think that's one that I'd throw out right away that I think our group should really take a closer look at. I actually have scrolled through it a few times, but I finally printed it today just so that I could actually have hands on paper and a highlighter and things like that to actually really digest it. So like I said, that's probably more a future meeting topic, but I had written it down as a note and I just wanted to get it out there right away. So with that, I guess maybe it, again, I'm glad we're all back and this is really good. I guess before we get into sort of our future schedule, it might be good to know meeting topics and what other people think, because I think that will help guide how often we think we need to meet and what makes sense. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to other comments. Mr. Tatum, and sorry, Mr. Esme, I saw Mr. Tatum's hand first.
That's all right. You can go first.
All right. I just want to thank everybody for the support. Because over the weekend I had first time ever in my life had to arrange funeral arrangements, and it was hectic for me. Like just going through the whole process of trying to be like super strong guy. Yeah, I got this. It just didn't work out like that way, but I got through it. It was spirituality, different things I dealt with. Going through anger, a lot of anger mostly, not sadness, just anger. But I got through it. It was good though, had all the family where I'm at now, in terms of recovery project, had it over here, and, was able to have everybody pictures. It's wonderful. But I talked to a lot of other people. The reason I'm talking, I talked to a lot of other people as far as what PCA workers is to be that own what is the name of the company? She has like 3 employees she had to get rid of because it's trust home care, and just far as the human resources background study, the background study thing, and try to get it set aside. I was thinking of you, Jana, what you're saying about the other, how people are being affected, and also to send letters, to have these people like send the letters to the to the box, and I showed them the site to look up on and stuff like that. Just been reaching out to other people, trying to get that going and stuff, and how important it is, into my community, sharing it to others. Yeah. I just wanted to share that.
Oh, and I think that's really helpful. And I think that, that's really helpful to know. And I don't know if Mr. Vogel, if you have the ability, like before kind of meetings, if there's people that have written in, I guess I don't always go to the website proactively to look. I don't know if there's a way you can cue us in. I think that'd be really good. And I think that's really helpful to see what people are writing in.
Certainly, Madam Chair. I can, in fact, send you copies of the comments that we've received so far. And if you'd like, I could give you login information to just go see those directly, you or all of the members.
I think that would be helpful. Yeah, because I want to make sure we're paying attention to that too.
In that case, I'll send out an email after this meeting, Madam Chair. And actually, I guess y'all will be my guinea pigs. So thank you in advance for any help with technical hiccups there.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Mr. Tatum, for that update and for sharing. Mr. Esme.
I guess I just wanted to sort of pick up on kind of planning out where we're going from here. And I was wondering, do we have any sort of specific instructions from the main committee on like what they would like from us next? Or if not, I mean, it seems like the natural thing is we've identified, the sort of 3 or 4 buckets of areas that we think the statute could be improved. I mean, I think maybe we just, start picking one, or you're picking parts of one, and then, coming up with, I mean, I think it would be good to sort of review, so we're all on the same page, like what we think the problem with this particular part of the statute is, and then, look towards maybe some of Mr. Vogel's research for other states for ideas of, what changes, what sort of alternative policy choices we could make, and then start seeing if we can come up with a consensus amongst this group about what those would be, and let's just start documenting our recommendations. And I don't know if it's happening for you guys, but Ms. Dawson has a frozen screen for me.
Madam Chair, if you can hear me, I think you just left, actually.
Yep, I'm sure she's logging out and coming back. And so I will just take up a minute or two of time until she gets back. I just want to say thanks for being transparent, Juan. I'm super sad with you about what's going on in your family, and being part of the recovery community with you. Like it's always hard when it hits close to home like that, brother. And so like anything I can do, and so just know that I'm thinking about you. And so, yep. Thank you for being transparent though. That's awesome. And so I think I appreciate, I can talk about her when she's not here, but I appreciate Ms. Dawson's leadership on this, that she continues to have us have these plans, right? What's the next step and what's the next plan? And so I'm with you, Josh, about what's the next tangible, right? How do we look at remedies, and what do we think's working, what's not working, and risk of harm. That's the thing for me with the remedies. Like, how do we look at, and one of the things, and this is just an idea, it maybe isn't the solution, but it's an idea. Like the Sentencing Guidelines Commission has severity levels on crimes, and how, could we use that Or is there a way to like use risk of harm to decide how long someone should be kept? Or like now all felonies are 15 years. And so is there a way to determine that easily so that it's nice and easy for DHS to determine how long someone should be looked at, how long the look back period should be? That's nice. And it's a nice bright line to make it easy for DHS, because anything we do is going to be complicated. Cut these ones, don't do this, do this. And so I just, as we're looking at solutions and remedies, like for us to kind of keep that in mind, that, Ms. Kassane's colleagues are going to have to like figure it out. So.
Can I react to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We still don't have our fearless leader, so it'll just be anarchy in here until she gets back. So to your point of using the sentencing guidelines to help us, maybe draw some distinctions amongst the big pool of felonies, I think that kind of does make some sense. One thing from the point of view of the remedies, though, I would like to, well, at least without thinking about it more, my gut instinct is to have the remedy, right? So like the set of like rights that somebody has when they're disqualified. I would think that we would want that to be basically consistent regardless of what you're disqualified for and how long you're disqualified for. So to me, it seems like it's two questions. Like one question is like, what are you disqualified for and how long is that disqualification period? And to your point of looking to the sentencing guidelines to help us maybe tailor the current list better, I think that makes sense. But then once you're disqualified, and I'm sort of just thinking out loud here, so I'm not even sure that if this is what you were saying, Gina, but once you're disqualified, I think it would make the most sense to have everybody have like the same like set of rights. Like you can challenge your disqualification, get a set aside. I mean, one of the things I don't like about how the current statute works is that some people are completely barred from even asking for a set aside.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so that doesn't make sense. It seems like once you're disqualified, you should be able to show that it's safe for you to work. And if you can show that, then DHS should have the power and the discretion to let you work.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like sometimes they get mixed up in my mind. Like what I was just talking about probably actually goes in the disqualification subcommittee, not ours, right?
I don't know. It's a little bit of a gray area, I think, because I know for sure they're looking at what crime should you be disqualified for. And I think probably a really nicely related issue for them would be, and how long are you disqualified for? Mm-hmm. But I mean, the how long are you disqualifying for part does move, that question I think feel like is a little bit closer to us too. So like if we wanted to make some recommendations on that, I think we could. For example, one of the things that we know we have picked up that is an issue that could have gone to either subcommittee was the permanency part, right?
Yeah, and I did that land with us, I think.
It did, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. That's one of our problem areas that we identified in the report.
And I keep looking back to this.
Yeah.
And Randy made me this really nice copy of it on paper.
That binding.
Yep, it's bound and everything. And so like looking at this kind of breaks down, I don't know that I agree fully with what they decided on, but it really breaks down the permanent ones and which ones to eliminate and stuff. And so it's definitely something we should like just pick a day and talk about it. So, did you email her?
I did, Ms. Evans, and actually I was about to say she's emailed me back. She apologizes. Her internet's a little sketchy, but she'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay.
And she's asked you to take over the meeting in the interim, if you don't mind.
So do we want to talk about how I suppose we should wait for her to come back to talk about a plan? Does everybody still feel like, we have a lot of work to do. I guess we can talk about that, right? Does everybody agree? We have a lot of work to do and we should probably keep meeting every other week, or do other people feel like it's too much? Does anybody feel like it's too much?
I don't feel like it's too much. I feel like we're probably as a group going to have more homework going forward than we have had so far.
Mhm.
I know Mr. Vogel was really carrying the load on a lot of that. Well, I shouldn't, I know there's other people here that were helping, but so I almost wonder if, you know, if we plan to meet every other week, you know, we might not always have enough time to do that, you know, some of that other stuff. But I kind of think that even if that's the case, like having a sort of a consistent touch base, you know, even just to update on progress and say, I'm still working on it, ask for help, those types of things.
Mhm.
Seems like a good idea to me. But we also might want to just sort of like kind of try to plan out, because we have a year before the next report, right?
It's due January, well, it's due December 15th.
Okay, so not quite a year. But I mean, we've got a big chunk of time now. I wonder if like it makes sense to just sort of plan out like, you know, when we hope to have things, you know, done. Like, you know, if we're gonna start with permanency first, let's like give ourselves a deadline. You know, this is when we're going to have our final recommendations for the permanency problem done, so that we can then move on to you know, the reconsideration process problem, or whichever one we pick next.
Mhm. Yep, I see. That's I love that, like that planning, like let's pick a thing and figure it out and pick a thing and figure it out. Like that really helps me like focus my energy. Um,
But that's also why I was wondering if we had gotten any sort of marching orders, so to speak.
mm-mm.
No, okay.
Nope, I think we're very autonomous, each individual subcommittee. Here's the other thing that I just want to throw out there, and I've had a couple conversations about this. So like one of the other task forces that I've been on the fringes of a little bit, task force, is the felony murder law reform task force. And they actually hired Wilder to do the data collection and like they put together a report with them. And we are like all of us together kind of doing that, and you know, with DHS's help with all this data. And but they had like a place that does that work help them with like analyzing the data, right? And then it's Will's job to actually do the report. That's what but like I feel like it's so much information. Do you know what I mean? To have like a research place, like who's at University of Minnesota? Rabina or MNJRC or somebody like that. Like,
Is there any money for that?
And so, yeah, it's it feels important. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder if just because of the nature of the issues, if that other task force felt like, because we do have DHS that has all the data, right, and is getting us all the data, and that's a double-edged sword, as we've seen. But I wonder if there was like nobody on the felony murder, like no state agency, analogous state agency that like had all that information, and Wilder needed to go like do a bunch of research just to get that information and collect it from, you know, all of the different counties and stuff. That might be part of why there's a difference.
Yeah, maybe. I think DHS or DOC was on there, and that's where most of it came from. There's
That makes
Lucas.
sense. Sentencing stuff.
Yeah.
I think I got it. I don't really know. I'm not holding my breath.
There you are. We see you.
Yes. It's Monday. I don't know what's going on.
It's the worst Monday of the year too.
Oh,
Daylight savings Monday.
yes.
For what it's worth, you don't have red bars by your name anymore.
Oh, good.
So hopefully that's a good sign.
Hopefully, I actually hardwired in, which sometimes my computer gets mad at too. So hopefully that. I'm actually at my office today. Usually I'm at my house. So. Well, I don't know. So I don't know what I missed.
We were talking about maybe trying to like come up with a roadmap for between now and January, try to give ourselves some deadlines. And then I guess sort of Gina and I were both thinking that maybe the simplest way to do it is just let's pick an issue, one of our 3 buckets, and then get to work on it. And then try maybe try to give us a deadline for that, whichever first issue is done, in 2 months or whatever it's going to be. And those might need to be flexible too. Because I imagine our next full task force meeting is going to be somewhat this conversation too, but for the whole group. So.
Right. It looks like we have Tashonda now too.
Nice. Yep. And that started with, does everybody feel like every couple weeks is good? Or I asked, does anybody feel like it's too much? And then we got to talking about homework a little bit.
Yeah.
And then a little bit about like research. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I guess my 2 cents would be, I think that 2 weeks, and if we're getting a lot done, we can always scale back. I'd rather, I guess my 2 cents would be have enough, and then if, where we can scale back versus we're scrambling at the end. Although I will be upfront, I do have beginning of April is pretty trial heavy for me. So I don't know what we're gonna, of course, there's always the possibility they don't go, but I have back-to-back jury trials for the week of the 4th, 11th, and 18th.
That's always fun.
That's gonna bog down at least my calendar. So I don't know how, I guess we can figure that out. And if it needs to be I miss and somebody else leads it, we can always do that too. Okay, so no, I think that makes sense. And Josh, I like your idea of essentially picking a topic of our kind of 3 we talked about. I don't know how people feel. I feel like the preponderance of the evidence one seems to be a pretty, I don't want to call it easy, but there just doesn't seem to be kind of the same emotion and the same, I don't know, issues surrounding some of the other ones, like the permanency and the because I think the like the actual remedies of what kind of we've been talking about, I'm worried that one's going to be quite a bit to me, just to try to start tackling something. That preponderance of the evidence seems like a pretty simpler one to start on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the other, I had a conversation with DHS on a completely other topic, and was talking with several members of DHS, and they not to say preponderance of evidence and the discretionary issues that we have don't make, I mean, those are important also, but they reminded us that like the statute itself and the amount of folks that are being disqualified based on like the 15-year bar eliminates a lot more people than their discretion. And they just wanted to remind us about that.
Yeah. No, and I think that makes sense. And that makes sense when you look at the list. And I know at the last big meeting, like Dave Irvin brought up the person who couldn't get that, I think it was a traveling set aside or something like that. And I didn't ask the question then, but there's a part of me, if we're really looking at some of those lists, that could start to eliminate some of the issues just in general too. And I'm only saying the preponderance of the evidence just because I get it. The other ones are bigger, but I think those, again, starting with, I think what's going to be the smaller one, and then working our way up. So I definitely understand what you're saying too. But I'm open to whatever.
I agree with that. Oh, go ahead, Dewan.
I was just, yeah, like you said, I was about to agree also. Yeah, I agree with you too, Jim. I mean, and also, Lucas, because you got to think about it, like with the evidence, like for instance, domestic. Guy gets pushed out the house. He pushed out the house. He still gets a domestic, domestic charge, and he didn't maybe still got some kind of simple. I don't know how the levels of it, the charges and stuff like that. Domestic. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, if he didn't do anything, pushed out the house, had to go to jail, got right out, for instance. But for instance, preponderance of the evidence could say that, well, he had a tussle with her or something, and it could be a tussle. And nothing never happened. He's not even a violent guy. I mean, he won't be able to work with healthcare or help people or just be around. So,
well, it's interesting you bring that up, because when I looked at it, the domestics, the misdemeanors were one of the highest preponderance of the evidence findings, which I thought was very interesting, because I know I've brought it up a few times, and then to actually see the data was actually kind of startling. So, and Mr. Josh, I apologize, I jumped in there and it's actually your turn.
I brought that up because I had a domestic before, but I didn't do anything. My brother's house, my kid's mother was there. She got upset. We wasn't together no more. I was bringing somebody else to my brother's house, watching his home, and she was there. I'm like, why she's watching it? So I'm like, you're not supposed to be here. I called the police. I'm like, the police are already on the way there. Like, what? Why? So they got there. They arrested me, and I'm supposed to be watching his house. But they let me go the next day. No charges or anything. But I think that might even affect it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it could.
Nothing happened.
Yep.
Yeah, got right out. No charges, nothing. But there is a report for that, though. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Josh, what were you going to say?
Well, it would just responding to what you pointed out, that because we have the three buckets, right? We have the permanency bucket, the preponderance of the evidence bucket, and then basically the reconsideration process bucket. And that last one, I think I agree, that one's going to be much more complicated. Both of the other two, I kind of just wanted to do that, like sort of see where everybody is at kind of thing on the other two. I mean, we've got the preponderance of the evidence is our remedy here, that we eliminate that and that we only have disqualifications for convictions. I mean, that's what I personally would be in favor of. And then kind of the same thing on the permanency one. I mean, my fix on that is, I mean, I think we could look at whether some of the offenses that are in the permanency bucket could get moved to somewhere else. But again, that might be for the other subcommittee. For our purposes, it may just be that what we want is that anybody who is disqualified, even permanently, has basically we give them back the ability to request a set aside if they can prove that they're rehabilitated and it's safe.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if, like, both of those buckets they're important, but are there solutions relatively simple or do we need to have a longer conversation? Do we need to have a debate about whether that's going to be the subcommittee's recommendation for those two?
You had one?
Yeah, I just wanted to add it to what you said, Mr. Esman. It's like, yeah, it's like just what you were saying. I kind of like I can obviously relate to it. It just makes it, but it's just like, for instance, like being, how can I just explain this correctly? Being approved or being given a set aside under supervision, years ago, and then continue to work, and to build on that, and then to later receive a letter, you're disqualified, but no explanation of why I was, you get what I'm saying? Why I was able to work under supervision. Why did you let me go through this process? Why did you not explain what happened later? Later when I finished my degree. You get what I'm saying? In between there's no language in there, nowhere, just saying you're disqualified. We don't care what happened before all of that, or whatever we said. Well, it's nothing. You get what, and then that could be if somebody that's not really, motivated, like I said before, or gonna ask questions and just be here and there, will just walk away probably, or miserable or whatever. You get what I'm saying. Get where I'm going with this though, Mr. Esman?
Absolutely. Yep. That's why we identified that issue as one of the three buckets that needed to to change. So I guess what I'm asking is we let, maybe we do like sort of an informal like check to see where everyone is at. Maybe we don't need a ton of conversation on those two parts of it.
And I made a note of that. I just want to see if Gina and Tashonda have something different to add, but then we can definitely come back to that.
Go ahead, Tashonda.
Hello. So yes, with everything that I've been hearing since coming in, and just hello, Chair and everyone. So it's almost as if having, from a remedy recommendation standpoint, right? It's almost as if having a requirement when it comes to preponderance of evidence, and we can choose other ones as well, but specifically with that one, where there's somewhat of a review process that needs to happen before the department can move forward with their decision. So I don't know if that would be like having an actual like advisory committee with community members or something to that extent. I'm not sure. I know there may be some pushback in regards to staffing shortages and the amount of cases that would need to be reviewed, but there needs to be something there because to Mr. Tatum's point, with the preponderance of evidence. So they're going by hearsay. They can legally go by hearsay. And this person has no way to articulate or just express that they even understand what's being, if it's slander or not. They're not given that opportunity to speak up about it. So how would we go about and how implementing some type of a review process?
And I guess I probably have a response to that, but Gina, you first.
Nope, respond.
So I think the only thing, Tashonda, that I was going to say one thing we're talking about is you would not even need to have a review process, because I think one of the questions is if we're just doing away with that standard entirely so that you really can only be disqualified if you actually have a conviction. So there would not even need to be a review process. And kind of my only thought, Josh, to sort of respond really quick to what you said was, I don't know if maybe we do need to have some more discussions on that based on what we just heard. The only other thing I also thought was it might be helpful because we're going to be ultimately making recommendations, and I'm open to if I'm thinking about this wrong, but just making sure if we're making the recommendation for a language change, we've talked about it in such a way that we have the backup support as to why it makes sense. So that's my only, I guess, thought. It's not a pushback. It's just more making sure when we're making the recommendation, we've got the support for why it makes sense.
I know Vice Chair was going to go next. I just want to add to it just really quick. I'm just saying, just in regards to with us looking to just have that have that removed entirely, that we can then include having that review, and or, because it's like I wouldn't want them to not want to remove it, but then there's nothing else that's there.
That makes sense. Gina?
So I just have a couple of things to, I've had so many conversations about this over the last few years. And, my pushback for two things: POE, first of all, the opposition to these recommendations is like lots of folks would be, I think, in favor or not opposed to like raising the standard on POE to clear and convincing, but not getting rid of it altogether. And that is because while not all folks that are involved in that did the thing or were participated in whatever it was. Some people need to be protected in child protection, in maltreatment cases, in whatever thing that happened with vulnerable adults. And so like, there's a reason that these things are in place. And we see the cases where it doesn't apply and we want to fight for it. But the people on the other end of it see the reason that it needs to apply. And so like I spoke with like it was actually Kelly Moeller, and I feel like she would be fine with me speaking for her, but she was like getting rid of it altogether wouldn't be something we would support. And so, but maybe raising it from what's the lowest one?
So right now it's preponderance of the evidence. The next one
Yeah,
up.
so preponderance of evidence. So she said she would be maybe supportive of raising it to clear and convincing, which is like the next level up of evidentiary standard or whatever. But they would not be in support of getting rid of it altogether. So that's like the opposition research on it. And so like, and here's what happens when we do a report where the pendulum swings all the way this way. What can happen is they can do a minority report, and then all you get when we go to like bring it to get it passed is just a big fat no. And they're not going to look at it at all because it's too far a different direction. And so that would just be my encouragement for us. And the same thing with like just getting rid of all the permanent stuff. And so what about like a 15-year bar for the more heinous stuff? And then that person, if they remained completely crime-free, would have the ability to apply for a set aside, because we need to be considering public safety, right? There's a reason this stuff is in place, and it's because people have been hurt. And so I think we need to have a little balance here. So
Can I respond briefly?
it's my nickel. Mhm.
So that's totally fine, and I'm definitely on board with having those conversations. I wasn't necessarily trying to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. I just wanted to sort of gauge everyone's temperature on that and see, what we thought we needed to do. I guess the one question I have though is, Gina, like, to some extent, I guess sort of thinking through kind of the delegation of this recommendation, and I guess maybe this kind of goes to the fact that we don't have a ton of clarity from the task force as a whole as to what our next step should be.
Mhm.
But, if it's on us, the members of this task force, to come up with our recommendations, maybe we should bring to the main group what we think it actually should be. And then if there's, more pushback from the main group where we need to scale back the recommendations, then that's fine.
Well, part of the problem is none of those folks that would, like, I probably am the most conservative person on this group, which is the saddest thing ever, because I'm not saying I believe the things I'm saying. I'm just saying, coming from people who I've spoken with, like the fact that I'm the most conservative person on this subcommittee is sad, right?
Yeah.
And so there is nobody from the other, like the
And
other
Representative
perspective.
Moeller is on the task force proper, right?
Well, and so is Max Page, and we have lots of folks on the group, just not in the subcommittee,
Yeah.
right? There's nobody from the other perspective represented in this particular subcommittee.
Well,
So we
and
need to-
that's where like it's hard to hear Representative Moeller sort of, at least it sounds like, already potentially digging her heels in. And especially whenever anybody starts talking about clear and convincing evidence, that is the most confusing standard. I think you could talk to 10 different attorneys and we would probably give you a different response. And we're the ones who deal with it. I mean, I deal with it in child protection on a daily basis, and I'd still probably give you a different definition than other attorneys. So that's actually a little nerve-wracking for me, and I don't know, nerve-wracking might be the wrong word, but that there's sort of already this pushback, and especially when it's a proposed standard that is not very clear, even though that's supposed to be in the title.
Sounds great.
And especially and that's where I'm thinking, sort of again, slowing down a little bit, I guess I'd rather, and this is more of a negotiation standpoint of, I can totally understand negotiation, but you don't go in with where you're going to settle. You go in with what you want, knowing you're going to have to fall back on some other things. And that's where I'm also sort of thinking that if we're going to go in with a recommendation, knowing there's going to be pushback, I'd rather go in with a recommendation that's supported by a whole bunch of data, because that makes it harder to ignore some, that data versus just, then it's, okay, somebody wants to push back. Well, then what's their logic and what's their reasoning other than somebody's been hurt? I get it, somebody's been hurt, but you got to give me more clarification and more of a clear answer than that. And I'm not, of course, putting this on you. I'm just sort of speaking in general. But that's kind of where I'm at. And I guess, yes, I would hate for us to do all of this work and it just gets the big X. But at the same time, we're the ones putting in the effort. That I would rather come in, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'd rather come in strong and sort of see where we are and come up with a recommendation that's supported by all of our research, and then I guess take it from there. So I don't know what other people like. And Tashonda, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in complete agreement that, when you, with what you just said, how you got a good settlement is when both sides don't get what they want, right? So, and
Good
this is
settlement
why
nobody loves.
Right. And so I think that, that's why I said that having an and or where it is going to, remove the preponderance of evidence, but then having that alternative. And I understand what you're saying about with the interpretations, right? However, you all know I am steady set on the accountability piece, because it's such rigid accountability for participants. And then on the other end of the spectrum, that's not the case. Participants cannot require accountability of systems, which is so problematic, right? So being able to, I think going to the larger task force to then just say like, this is what we're thinking, what are you all pushing back on or whatnot. I don't know how constructive or strategic that would be, considering that this is the subgroup for remedies. I think that we should definitely, first off, everyone here is amazing. And I know that together we can, I know we're not actually coming up with the recommendations, but we can come up with a game plan that makes sense. I know having the data, this is why I'm part of the data subcommittee. The numbers don't lie. It is what it is with the data. We have that, right? When we're getting more. So being able, I don't think that we need to make this more harder than it has to be, that we just follow the blueprint that we already have and go with that. And I absolutely agree with shooting for the stars and landing on the moon. Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. Or somebody, oh yeah, Dewan.
Yeah, and I can, like we're saying, like we have to be solid. We can't just go in there and say personal experience, this is what this and that, and not have the total. And I agree with that. And I'm totally motivated with that because, regardless of what happens here, it's continue to fight for me. You know what I mean? The fight is still going to continue because this is reality for me. I already got another plan after this. If this don't go right, I'm going with a lawsuit for sure, because you're not just doing this to me and just telling me, okay, it's sorry, I'm not accepting that. That's not going to work for me. I'm just, so whatever you need from me, I'll do it, be quiet. Hey, whatever it is, I'm with it. So yeah, I'm pretty motivated with it. I'm just saying this is, 100%.
Yeah, Josh.
So I wonder, I think Gina brought up a really good point that we just don't have the opposition viewpoint in this subcommittee. Regardless of where we end up on the issue of, should we ask for our perfect statute and then compromise with the larger group if we have to, or whether we compromise ahead of time. I would sort of lean, like Tashana was talking about, shoot for the moon, shoot for the stars and fall back on the moon. But if we're going to do that, I think it makes the most sense then to make sure that we have, we put out the best argument and the best product we can when we come back to the main committee. And I think, to Gina's point, that does mean hearing from the people who are going to oppose it, so that we
Right.
know what those arguments are going to be, and that maybe we even address them ahead of time, or at least be prepared to address them. So I wonder if one of the things we should build into our sort of work plan is to invite some of those folks, so we can hear their opposition and we can document it.
And I think that's definitely a really good idea. And I like that. And we definitely do want to hear that, because I do think in building any argument, you have to know and you have to understand the opposition, because otherwise it's just what you want instead of it being well reasoned. And the opposition may have some very good points that we haven't considered. And so I definitely, agree with that. And I think that makes sense. Just kind of watching the time. I don't know really how much time we'd planned for today. Dawn, I'll let you go first. And then I was going to throw out an idea for kind of where we want to go from here.
Just trying to take that clapping off there. It's still stuck for some reason.
You're just really happy. You like
Yeah.
what we're all saying.
Yeah, I'm totally on board. Like what Mr. Esserman said. He said, as far as because why those voices will be very important, I feel it's because of the ripple effect. It will show you, like, okay, you say this is positive standards and this is ruining the integrity of this, but look at what you're ruining in our community. The lives of people that are changing. You can see it, like, yeah. So I think it'll be important because of that, and it'll show.
Yeah.
Chair, I know we're down for 12:30. I don't know if we'll go that long. But I do want to say that, even with the emotional stories or the individual perspectives, are powerful, but we really do need to make sure we're following the data, the statistics, the science, the money. That's going to be huge. Following the money of how much is being spent in regards to, I know with cases that have been settled and different things, there's information that we probably would not be privy to, but that would be a focus that we can look at as well in regards to what we're bringing up. But again, however, there definitely needs to be some type of a review of the department, of the decisions that's being made before they're actually made. I know we have an appeals process, but data is showing people are not, either don't know or aren't encouraged and have barriers that prevent them from following that next step. So, and I have heard that it's been kind of a culture to, especially in regards to like child welfare or risk of harm, to follow along with preponderance of evidence and be wrong versus not, and it can cause harm. So I know that's kind of the culture, but we're talking about people's lives.
Yeah. No, I think that I definitely hear what you're saying. And I know if we are scheduled till 12:30, I guess I don't know what people are thinking. I think this is a very good discussion. I also am sort of thinking, looking ahead. I'm kind of wondering if we want to perhaps shift to sort of scheduling out topics for at least our next few meetings and sort of getting those scheduled. Especially just so that we all kind of know if there's homework we need to be doing or something we want to be looking at in the meantime. One thing that comes to mind, and Will, if you've already done this and I've just completely forgotten, I apologize. But I don't remember if you were still looking at the Adam Walsh. Did we have the Adam Walsh sort of dissected into the bullet points of really what's specifically covered?
Madam Chair, I did give that brief presentation with the bullet points from the title something, I'm sorry, of the Social Security Act, but otherwise, no, I haven't made any more progress on that. Apologies.
No, that's totally fine. And that's why because I think we were talking about it and then I think we moved into actually making our recommendations. So we kind of at least paused that for a little while. So I'm wondering kind of next meeting topic, just because we already have the data. I'm kind of wondering, I think if it would make sense and how the group feels on if by the next meeting, everybody has really kind of reviewed that latest data set, the part 3 in more, detail, and be prepared to, and I don't know if Will, if you could kind of do just sort of a brief breakdown of it and summary, just so that we've got that. I think that would be good, because I do think some of the data in there is going to be helpful as we're making our recommendations. And Tashonda?
Yes, I wonder if maybe we can look to combine the remedies and data, have a meeting combined in the future, if that would be helpful. 'Cause like I said, that data really sets a nice, it sets a nice landscape or blueprint of where we can go going forward. And I really like your ideal about scheduling out time to just focus on one specific topic. I think that would be very strategic.
Yeah. Josh? Oh, you're muted.
I put my hand down, but I didn't unmute. So I agree with that game plan going forward. And with regard to, since we're talking about data, does anyone know, has anyone looked, I haven't looked into it all that closely yet, but has anyone seen or know if part of the data that DHS is able to get us has to do with actual like workplace misconduct events? It occurs to me, especially if we're preparing to maybe get some pushback on the idea of, dropping the preponderance of the evidence standard, that one thing we might want to do is see if we can not just look at how effective these policies have been in disqualifying people or not disqualifying people, which I know DHS has that information, but then how effective is the net that is cast that broadly at actually creating, safety for the vulnerable people in these workplaces, especially if we could compare that to some of the other states that we've been looking at that don't disqualify people on a preponderance of the evidence standard. So that's just an idea to throw out for those folks who are already working on the data side of things. And if we move forward with like a joint subcommittee meeting, I think that would be something that I would like to explore.
So let's unpack that a little bit, Josh. Who would hold that data? Like people who lost their license due to workplace misconduct, people who would hold that? Like the Department of Labor? Who would hold that data? Like people who
Yeah, I mean, it may be that there is no central repository for it. And if that's the case, maybe one of the things that we should add to our recommendations is that licensed facilities report if they have to terminate someone from misconduct, that gets reported back so that we start collecting it so that we could make that comparison.
Well, for sure, people who have licenses, that data is collected. Like licensed professionals, that information is collected.
Oh, so like when you go to the nursing board, for example?
Yep. For sure, those 18 licensing boards have that data, but I don't know about like, PCAs or
I mean, they're licensed too.
Or like treatment techs or whatever. So then let's get down to like the world I know, like our recovery coaches. I don't know if that is kept somewhere. Do you know, Emily? Miss Cassane?
Hi.
Okay.
Vice Chair Evans and members. That's one of the cases I'll double check about that. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding exactly what you're asking for. If you can just kind of flesh it out. So it would be,
Yep. So we're just looking like, so we want to compare like, so we do it one way in Minnesota and like other, like we do it pretty strict here in Minnesota and then other states do it a different way. And we just want to look, does our state have more incidents of workplace tomfoolery than other states do? Is that good, Josh? Or you got another way to explain it?
No, yeah, that's right. I would say we cast a wider net. We are more aggressive in disqualifying potential workers, at least just based on looking at what standard of evidence we use to disqualify people. So I'd like to be able to compare the effectiveness of that strategy against other states that let people or theoretically let more people work, at least based on, using a stricter burden of proof before they disqualify someone.
so
Okay.
Mr. Esme and other members. So are you looking for sort of people that are disqualified after they have had a cleared study? So the rat back or?
Yeah, I guess what I would be looking at is it's sort of like the, what's the crime rate here kind of thing, right? Like what is the like rate of, misconduct in our state in licensed facilities versus that rate of misconduct in other states.
Okay.
Well, and I'm wondering if one way to look at it, maybe where I feel like there should be data for this, and maybe even the Department of Human Services would have it, is if somebody, for example, got a set aside and then there was the misconduct that, to me, there seems to be that would trigger some sort of a removal again, if that makes sense. Where they'd already be tracked by DHS because you've got that paper trail of the set aside. And then, and I don't know that that's going to get us everything. I think, Josh, yours is still a wider net, but I just wonder if at least that's one potential location of some data. I don't know. That's just my thought.
So that is, I guess, that is the Rat Back data though, right? Where you're constantly running background checks on folks and another arrest comes up, which is one way to pull that data, different than
Except
something that they've done at work that
that's what I'm
caused them
interested
to be
in.
removed, right? But that Rat Back data would be one way to pull that data, that they've committed another crime.
Yeah, that's true. But just to clarify, what I'm most interested in is the goal of the statute is to protect vulnerable people in these licensed facilities. And so I'm less interested if somebody later gets disqualified because they do something outside of work. What I would really like to see is, what is the rate at which we have incidents in these workplaces that potentially jeopardize vulnerable people with our standard compared to states that are more permissive in allowing people to work in those same facilities, so that we can gauge whether, what's the value from the perspective of the vulnerable person to have our state disqualify people at a higher rate. At least I think we will be at a higher rate, or at the very least with a more permissive disqualification standard. Does that make sense?
Yes, my members. What I'll do is, if it's okay with this group, is I will talk with our data team, convey, and we may ask them clarifying questions, but I'm getting the gist of your question. So
okay, thank you.
I can get back to our data team.
Yeah, and Josh, I definitely think that makes sense. And I also wonder, and I apologize, Gina, if you were starting. I also wonder if when we get some more of the history that at the last large group meeting, at least that won't give us the specific data, but I feel like that'll also at least give us some more history too.
Yeah. I wonder too, Will, if that's something in the project that the Council of State Governments did on licensing, if that was something that we could maybe pull from there that they did on like what was the long-term like risk of harm or return on investment or whatever. I wonder if that was part of that study.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I'll look into that.
And Chair and Vice Chair and members, hello, Ms. Kassane. Do you mind, just for clarity purposes, can you please just summarize what what Member Esme is asking? Please.
You want me to try again?
No,
Or
I wanted
does someone else want to try to do it?
No, I wanted Ms. Kassane to
Oh, okay.
summarize. Please.
Sure, I'm happy to, Member Williamson. My understanding of Mr. Esme's question is that the purpose of the question is to look at the effectiveness of the disqualification structure that's currently within the 245C background study statute. And he's suggesting one way is to look at data of people who are disqualified. So after they have received a cleared study, they're later disqualified for conduct that is within the workplace setting for which they have the background study. And then I'm going to, if I'm understanding that correctly, I'm going to convey that to our data team. They may or may not have some clarifying questions, or just depending on what how it meshes with data we collect or have available for us, and then have an open communication with the group.
No, that's great. And I think too, honing in on just seeing what the what Mr. and Member Esme can correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but just to also hone in on just what has been the results of that. If there has been an increase of harm to those facilities. Also, I know that with the data subcommittee, we have put in a request in regards to a presentation or someone from the data team being available. And I know, Ms. Kassane, you're gonna get back with us regarding that, but I think that, if it's with data and remedies coming together, maybe even disqualifications, like we can just have a coming together of all the subcommittees when we're able to find out from the data team availability, so that we can then, any additional questions that come up as we're getting the department's interpretation of the data, then we can be very tactful as far as next steps, would be my suggestion.
Yeah,
Thank
a
you.
meeting of all three subcommittees. Maybe we should just do that at the main committee meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I know the chairs of the various subcommittees have periodically met. And so I think that might be something that we can raise when we meet. I know you tend to schedule those. So if you want to throw that down as a potential topic, because I think, Tashonda, you'll be on that one, and we can try to get something like that figured out. Perfect. Okay, so I guess kind of at least where we're at is, I think it's pretty clear we still have quite a bit we will want to discuss. I think at least kind of two big potential next meeting topics. And I think if we can at least sort of have two outlined, and then we can keep outlining after that, would be hearing from, whether it's Representative Moeller, whether it's Max Page, whether it's somebody else, but definitely getting that alternative perspective. If we can invite somebody else to definitely be part of the discussion. And then also reviewing that data 3 data, I think the data, the part 3, whatever it is.
Data set 3.
Yes.
Oh, and Chair, I did want to just say to Vice Chair Evans, even though I don't quite claim to be conservative, I'm not liberal either. So don't feel like you're the only one. I don't claim either end of the spectrum.
So, since we already have the data, I'm wondering if it makes sense to sort of plan out that the next subcommittee meeting as to, everybody have that reviewed. That can definitely be part of the discussion and sort of see where we go from there. And then that gives us time then for the one after that to have kind of that alternative perspective. Just looking ahead at the calendar here. Were we normally meeting on Tuesdays and we're just happen to be on Monday today? I feel like I
Madam
haven't
Chair,
usually been at the office.
Madam Chair, the last meeting on Tuesday was to avoid the President's Day holiday, which was an executive branch holiday. So Monday had been the normal meeting time before then.
Okay. It may have been, I think with COVID, maybe that's why I hadn't realized I was at the office. So, okay. So then do Mondays typically work for people? Does this 11 o'clock time still work?
Chair, for me, I would probably have to be coming in like around 11:20, 11:30 on Mondays.
Okay.
Other than that, it would be fine.
Okay. And I guess I'm fine with that, because I'm worried about pushing it too late and it covers the entire lunch hour for all of us. So I guess if we can keep it at 11 and just understand, Tashonda, you're going to be coming in a little late, that's okay. Unless anybody else feels very strongly otherwise. Okay, no objections. So then if we're meeting the every other week, I guess I'm going to be kind of seeing what people want to do. I'm actually on spring break with my children the week of the 28th. I have promised them to try to not do work. So I don't know if that's still what other people want to do, if you guys want to meet. But I will be in Washington, D.C., walking around everywhere. So.
I know I have a trial that week.
Okay.
For what it's worth. If everyone was okay with just pushing it back another week, that would be better for me, but.
Yeah.
I would be in agreement. Keep your promise, Chair, keep your promise.
There's always something that pops up that turns into an emergency, but if I can plan ahead, I definitely try to not. So looking at then the week after that, it would be the 4th. I am technically scheduled for a jury trial that week, but I don't know that I'd actually be in the jury trial that morning at 11. So I could actually potentially still make that work. So if we want, we can schedule it for, that would be April 4th at 11. Does that work for people?
Mm-hmm. I think too, Lucas, if we do plan out, if we can get like a schedule together and like, we're going to work on this for 4 weeks and work on this for 4 weeks between you and Josh and Tashonda and I, like if somebody's not here, like we can keep moving, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody can run the meeting and we can keep moving. So,
I definitely think it. And I guess my initial sort of thought, I think the hope was to potentially jump right into the preponderance of the evidence. I guess based on our discussion this morning, I don't know if people feel, but it seems to me we need a few more weeks and a few more meetings of information gathering. I guess that's kind of what I was feeling, sort of gauging from kind of the conversation. So if we even plan out the next 2 meetings are still a little bit more information gathering. So that would be, I guess, probably the 14th and the 18th. And then that put us at the 9th. If that's how it's working, then the 9th, we're moving on to the next topic. But
Madam Chair, would be May 2nd after that.
That's why I looked ahead too far. That's my
the
thought.
other alternative, Lucas, would be, if we're not like you were talking about having Max, or we could come up with a recommendation, present it to the larger group, and then get feedback there. Would be the other way to do it. So.
Yeah, I guess my only thought is, especially because I don't want to put somebody off so far that then we get feedback and they're so turned off they can't even hear if we've revised. That's my only concern with that is I want to, and again, it may be, we're still going to put people off, and that is what it is. But I guess there's a part of me that would like some of that feedback before we're even testing recommendations, so that we at least have some, knowing we're going to get even more feedback. That's my only thought. I don't know what other people think. Yeah, Dawn?
I concur.
No, last thought, like I was saying, I was collecting that information from others that were been affected by this. Now I will just start, when I do that, I'll take names down and, and actually information about it. So that's what I should have did before. So I'll start doing that now as we will have some names and information and where they were working and things like that. Just a little small information. Yeah.
I think that makes sense. So I think just sort of, if we're talking, so April 4th and April 18th. At least the next one, if everybody could have that data part 3 reviewed, just so that we've, I think, kind of all got a handle on that. Will, if there was any follow-up research you were still doing on the Adam Walsh, could you have, if there was anything still left on that? And I apologize, I should have double checked that before this meeting, but I did not.
Madam Chair, I'll double check as well and come prepared at that meeting if I need to do any of that.
I think that would be helpful just to kind of wrap that piece up. And then I don't know if Gina, just because you have had more conversations with Representative Moeller,
I'm texting her right now.
if that's the, if she'd be welcome to come, if she's welcome or would want to come, or and that could then potentially be on the 18th. And then I think, again, that kind of, we're not losing track of time, but let's try to get some of these other more preliminary discussions out of the way. And then I think we can move on to more of the actually tackling what it is we're gonna want to recommend. So those are my two cents. That makes sense. Okay, perfect. Well, let's plan. Will you get out invites for the 4th and the 18th?
Certainly, Madam Chair. For May 2nd as well.
Yes, please. Yeah, let's just get it on the calendar so that it's there.
Sounds
And
good.
then,
And I'll try to make a practice of having invites at least a month out, just so the members aren't blindsided by any of these.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, perfect. I think we at least have a plan for the next few meetings so that we're using our time. And I think overall our group did really well last time. I think we actually were on top of it. So I'm actually not too worried about this group at all. But yeah, any kind of last minute thoughts before we leave? No? Tashonda loves where we're at. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and hang in there for this Monday after